Hello friends, we are here for CA Final FR revision lectures of Ind AS. So today we are here with Ind AS 108, that is segment reporting. So segment reporting, as the name suggests, so it is talking about reporting of a segment. So first thing that comes to our mind is what is segment? Second, how can we understand which segment is reportable? After a segment is classified as a reportable segment, what is to be reported? Correct. So basic three questions: what is segment, which are reportable segment, and how you are supposed to draft a segment report. Correct. Now chartered segment is nothing but basically a unit, division, department, by whatever name called. It is a separate unit, department, division of an entity which represents a separate line of business. Correct. For example, in JKSha classes, we have got, we are into coaching industry. So we have got one CA division, one foreign courses division, one CS division, one +2 division, 11th, 12th. So these are separate line of business. Correct. An electronic shop might have a mobile division and a TV division. So there are two or three, or rather more than one segments in an organization, and each segment or each unit or each division represents a separate line of business. When I say separate line of business, it means that segment independently can be sold and renders services. Renders services matlab it is in the business of supplying goods and services. Its profitability can be established. Am I clear? So put it in a nutshell, a segment is nothing but a unit, division, or a department of an entity which is catering to a separate line of business, and that business, that segment can be independently sold or has been rendering services. Rendering business. Rendering business means it is into the supply of goods and services. Correct? So this is what a segment is. Basically, you must have understood, instead of putting into words also, you might be understanding that it's in a big business, there are small businesses, and each separate business is known as a segment. Am I clear? Yes, no, yes. Like if you go into a Raymond showroom, they have got two segments. One is of tailoring and the other is of what do we say? Shooting, shirting. So in one business house known as Raymond's, there are two segments available. One, they make profit by selling shooting, shirting, cloth length, and the other segment is where they tailor goods for their customers. Correct. And nowadays you must have heard that they are coming out with a third segment also, where they deal with ready-made garments. So each is a separate line of business. Each segment ka income expenses can be found out. Each segment has a different operating and financial policy. Each segment is looked after by a chief decision making operator, chief operating decision maker. Am I clear, chatted? Now, so it is very clear, and you must have seen in, you go to suppose some hotel, so you'll find that there are basically bare minimum two segments. One is lodging and one is lodging and one is restaurant. Restaurant caters to the food industry, and lodging caters to the other hotel rooms cater to the lodging facility. So there are two clear demarcated segments. You must have seen Reliance. Reliance is a segment like Reliance Finance, Geo Finance, then Reliance Retails, Reliance Petroleum. So these are the separate segments, each catering to a different kind of business, and each unit can be independently run, and each unit can be independently sold. There are three salient features through which we can recognize that it is a segment. First, it generate or may generate revenue and incur expenses. It generates revenue independently and its expenses can be tracked. Revenue generates and may generate, matlab it can be a startup also. Correct. Second is its operating and financial policies and reports are available. So you must have noticed in an organization that the chief officer, chief CEO of the organization, chief executive officer gets report from, like if Mr. Mukesh Ambani gets report from Reliance Retail, Reliance Finance, Reliance Telecom, Reliance Petroleum. Those are known as MIS reports, that is Management Information Reports. If you look into the reports carefully, you will come to know each report is talking about a separate line of business, and that is how we come to know that each MIS report is hinting to a different segment. Am I clear? So it should have capacity. It is a department which generates income or is in a capacity to generate income, and it incurs expenses separately. Second, its operating and financial policies are available through MIS reports. It is regularly reviewed by chief operating decision maker. Here are the things. It generates or may generate revenue. It generates or may generate revenue. Its separate operating and financial reports are available through MIS reports. That means हर डिपार्टमेंट का एक सेलिंग पैटर्न होगा. एवरी डिपार्टमेंट वुड हैव अ सेपरेट selling pattern, purchasing pattern, their offers, what kind of production line they are in. Every department is a separate business unit, and उस business unit का you have a head. Correct. Suppose if I take JK classes, तो JK classes का भाई एक CA division का head है, one foreign courses का head is there, one 11-12 का head is there. Correct. So I can say segments are based on the separate business line. Am I clear? Yes or no? Yes, sir. Now, and it is regularly reviewed by chief operating decision maker. Who is this chief operating decision maker? Now, this chief operating decision maker takes the responsibility of allocating organization ka resources, that what budget should be sanctioned. That means if a department requires to spend money on its asset and expenses, they require money. From where they will get the money? Organization. But organization has to fund all the separate line of business. So there is a head of that department which takes the responsibility of allocating resource to that particular segment. He is known as Chief Operating Decision Maker, CODM. Am I clear? Second responsibility. He not only assesses resources, allocates resources, but assesses performance also, keeps a check on the organization or keeps a check on the department. How is that department performing? Secondly, he takes responsibility of its performance also. That means I don't only allocate resources, मैं खाली पैसे नहीं देता हूँ. I don't only give money or allocate resources, but I also make sure that I keep check on how the department is performing. Am I clear? And if the department is not performing good, I take the responsibility also, and I make sure that I regularly review that department. Am I clear? So chief operating decision maker has basically 4 responsibilities. Number 1, he allocates resources. He checks or assesses performance. He takes the responsibility of the performance, and he regularly reviews the performance also. Am I clear? That means basically we are talking about a departmental head chartered. Am I clear? So how can you say that a particular is a segment? Apart from the definition says it's a separate line of business which can be sold or ended. Sold means it can be independently, that unit can be sold, or that unit is separately doing business. Business means of supplying goods and services. How can we identify? If we see 3 salient features. First salient feature charted, first salient feature is that it generates revenue or may generate revenue and incurs expenses. Second, its operating and financial policies are separate from the entire organization. Am I clear? Third, it has a departmental head whom we call it as, the standard calls it as chief operating decision maker, which has 4 responsibility. He allocates resources, he assesses performance. Number 3, he is responsible for the performance and he reviews the performance. Am I clear? Now a very interesting thing. Suppose there are quite a few segments. Can we club a few segments? Yes. For example, chartered, there was a company which was into production of 2 things. Apart from lot of things, they had 2 separate departments. One was soaps, bathing soaps, and the other was shampoo. Now with the time, so they both were separate departments or separate units or separate segments. Now with time chartered, they wanted that body soaps, bathing soaps converted into that liquid soaps for bathing. Now liquid soaps for bathing and shampoo are very similar. So they wanted to merge these two operating segments and make it a one operating segment. Am I clear? Bathing necessities bolkar or toiletry necessities bolkar, whatever. Can they do that? To merge two operating segments and create one operating segment, they have to keep in mind few things like two or more operating segment of an entity can be combined for reporting purpose as a single operating segment if they have similar gross profit margin. Correct. Shampoo and body soap, body liquid soap, they have a suppose economic characteristics. Both are onto similar GP percentage ground. Nature of production is also same. Sorry, nature of product is also same. Both are liquid. One is for hand, and other is for body. Production process is almost same. Only the little bit of ingredients are different. The customer they are catering to, they are also same. The distribution channel is also same, and the regulatory environment under which they are covered, that is also same. So if all these conditions are satisfied, then you can merge two separate operating segment into one for the purpose of reporting. Am I clear? So now it is very clear. Two things we learn. What is a reportable segment? What is a segment, and can two segments be merged? Yes, two segments can be merged if following 6 criteria are met. Their economic characteristics are same. That means selling price, cost price, GP margin is almost same. Nature of the product is almost same. So I gave an example of body soap and shampoo. Body soap in the liquid form. So both ka cost of production and both ka selling price and both ka GP margin was almost same. Second, nature of product or services. Both are catering to your bathing services and both are related to for one purpose only. Correct? Third is nature of production process. Both are liquid, so their production process is also same, barring few ingredients which are different. The customers using are also same. The people who are using the body soap, they are using the shampoo also. Distribution channel to the retail outlets and the distributors is also same. And the government regulatory, it's not there anything, but if it is there, it is same again. Am I clear? So if these conditions are fulfilled, more than one operating segment can be merged for the purpose of reporting. So now we understood what is a segment. Now the second question which hits our mind is, what is a reportable segment? Now chartered, reportable segment के लिए a particular segment can become a reportable segment if it passes through any one of the three tests. Any one of the three tests. First one is materiality test. Second one is comparative test, and the third is overall test. Am I clear? Now what is materiality test? Materiality test in itself has three further tests: revenue test, asset test, result test. Now, a segment can be a reportable segment. Materiality test में first revenue. The revenue of that segment should be 10% or more of the total revenue of all the segments put together. Revenue of a segment, if it is 10% or more, then the total revenue of all the segments put together, if this condition is satisfied, then it is a reportable segment. When I say revenue over here, revenue means external revenue and internal revenue. External revenue means which you are selling outside the organization to the customers. Internal revenue means inter-segment sales, interdepartmental sales. Am I clear? For example, there is a laptop division, there is a mobile division. So there is a laptop division and there is a mobile division. Mobile division mein the company requires laptop for office purpose. That was taken from the laptop division. Laptop division ka salesman require mobile phone. That was taken from mobile division. That means there is an inter-segment sales. Correct? So when I say revenue, revenue does not mean only external sales, it means internal sales also. So over here, the first condition says that revenue of the department or revenue of the segment should be 10% or more than the total segment revenue of all the segments put together, and revenue for this purpose means external plus internal. Internal revenue means inter-segment revenue. Second is asset test. asset. Asset test mein chartered segment asset should be 10% or more than the total assets of all the segments put together. Am I clear? Now chartered. Asset test of any operating assets of any operating segment is 10% or more of combined assets of all operating segments put together. Result test. Result test means we are talking about profitability. Profit or loss of any segment. Profit or loss of any segment is 10% or more than combined profit or loss of all the segments put together. Now chartered, there is a twist. Let's understand. Suppose there are few departments. Department A, a few segments. Segment A, segment B, segment C, segment D, segment D. 200 profit, 300 profit, 500 loss, 600 loss, 200 profits. So total of profits is how much? 200 plus 300 plus 200. 200 plus 300 plus 200. Profit is 700. Loss is 500 plus 600. 1100. Whichever is higher. So operating segment on result is profit or loss of any segment is 10% or more than the total profit or loss whichever is higher of all the segments put together. I repeat, profit or loss of any segment is 10% or more than total profit or loss whichever is higher of all the segments put together. So when you are checking 10%, you will check 10% of whichever is higher. 1100 is higher. So 1100 ka 10% if anybody crosses, 1100 ka 10% is 110. So any segment crosses 110 in profit or loss is a reportable segment. Am I clear? So three materiality test. First materiality test was revenue test. Revenue of any operating segment is 10% or more than the total revenue of all the segments put together. Revenue over here means sales. Sales means sales to outsiders and inter-segment sales also. Second is asset test. Asset of any operating segment is 10% or more than total assets of all the segments put together. Third is result test, that is profit or loss. Profit ka symbol is pi, loss ka symbol I have made it reverse pi. So profit ka symbol pi, loss ka symbol I have made it reverse pi. Correct. Profit or loss of any operating segment is 10% or more than total profits or total loss whichever is higher of all the segments put together. Correct. Means higher of combined profit of all the segments which are in profit and combined losses of all the segments which are in loss. Now chartered, if any one of the tests you satisfy, you are a reportable segment. This is materiality. Then chartered comparative test. Any operating segment in current year will be considered as a reportable segment. Any operating segment in current year will be considered as reportable segment if they satisfy, if they had satisfied materiality test in the previous year. Correct. So in current year, any segment can be a reportable segment if they had satisfied materiality test in the previous year. Or contrary, we can say any segment which has satisfied materiality test in the current year will become a reportable segment by default in the next year also. Am I clear? Materiality test means you do not have to satisfy asset test, revenue test and result test, all three. Any one test you satisfy, you satisfy materiality test. If you have satisfied materiality test in the current year, then by default you become a reportable segment next year, even if you do not qualify any materiality test. Similarly, any reportable segment or any segment which was reportable in the previous year because it had passed materiality test previous year. Any segment which was reportable segment in previous year because it had passed materiality test in the previous year is reportable in current year by default, even if it does not passes any materiality test. Am I clear? Overall test. Now suppose chartered, there are 5 reportable segments. all 5 reportable segments का revenue we add, only external revenue. For overall test, it is only external revenue. There are 5 reportable segments. All 5 reportable segments का revenue put together should be greater than equal to 75% of the total revenue of the entity. Correct? Total revenue of reportable segments, total external revenue of the reportable segments should be greater than equal to 75% of the revenue of the entity. Revenue of the entity by default is external revenue only. Am I clear? If these 5 segments ka revenue chartered crosses 75%, wonderful, life is beautiful. But if it does not cross 75%, suppose it crosses 70% only, that means there is a deficiency of 5%, then another segment which has the highest revenue shall be included to reach that 75% mark. Am I clear? So any other segment with highest revenue should be included so that it crosses 75% mark. Sir, suppose there are 5. The 5 ka total is 70%. Correct? You pick up next highest. Next highest is 3% only. So 6 segments का मिलाकर भी sir 73 हुआ. Then again, now there are 1% वाला only. तो 70 में chartered there were how many? 5. Then 3% वाला 1. Now all have 1%. तो 1% वाला 2 लेना होगा. Am I clear? You have to make sure that reportable segments का revenue cross 75% of the total revenue of the entity. And revenue in overall test means external, but in materiality test it means external plus internal. Sir, अगर ऐसा हुआ तो कि we add revenue of all the reportable segments, rather all the segments का revenue we add and it is not crossing 75%. You know what you are saying? Is it practically possible? There are 8 segments only. That means entire 100% sales is coming from these 8 segments only, no? So we are supposed to select reportable segment. That reportable segments are 70%. Remaining are 3 segments. The 3 segments you have to include that many segments which will help them cross 75%. If you take all the segment, then it will become 100% only, no? Correct, sir. Understood. Now, after overall test, total revenue of all reportable segments should be greater than 75% of the total revenue of the entity. Then additional operating segments with higher external revenue should be identified as operating segment. Checking total external revenue of all reportable segments divided by total external revenue of entity into 100 is X%. If X% is less than 75%, select additional segments. Correct? Apart from this, if management desires to report any segment which has not satisfied any test, they are allowed to do so. So first is materiality test, second is comparative test. Last year it was reportable because of materiality. This year also it will be reportable. Third is overall. Overall means reportable segments ka revenue should cross 75%, else include additional. After this 3 also, management feels, no, I want to report segment F. Why? Meri ichha. It's a new segment. My shareholders should know that what we are doing in a new segment. Can he report? Yes. That is known as if a management of an entity, Ladla segment, pampered segment. If a management of an entity wants to consider any other operating segment as a reportable segment, then it can do. All operating segments, so suppose there are 20 segments, out of which 12 become reportable because of one or the other conditions. 8 are non-reportable segments. Those 8 non-reportable segments are clubbed together and shown in the segment report as others. So there are total 20 segments, 12 are reportable, 8 do not qualify any test, nor they are liked by the management. Then those 8 segments are clubbed together and shown in the segment report as others. All operating segments which are not reportable segments should be combined and disclosed as other segments in segment report. So you understood what is a segment, then how to become a reportable segment, and third, how would reporting segment look like. external revenue gross less GST. That gives you segment revenue. Add other operating income. Other operating income, that will give you total revenue. Total revenue minus segment expenses, that will give you segment profit or loss. Unallocated, that means expenses of the organization which could not be attributed to any segment. Head office ka rent, head office ka electricity, head office ka peon, those expenses which could not be identified with any segments are called unallocated income and expenses. That will give you profit before interest and tax less interest and finance cost. That gives you profit before tax less tax expense, gives you PAT. Tax expense means current tax expense and deferred tax expense. Current tax expense and deferred tax expense. Segment assets and liability. Segments assets are segment assets, unallocated segment assets, unallocated investment. This is the investments of the entity. Other unallocated assets. Office building, this is an unallocated asset. Correct. Accounting software, unallocated asset. These are all entity ka. Equity and liability, segment liabilities. Unallocated liability, that means borrowings, share capital and reserves and surplus. Share capital and reserves and surplus are not segment wise, but they are of the organization as a whole. Other information, depreciation, capital expenditure, geographical information, home and foreign. Total revenue, total assets and capital expenditure. This are the contents of segment reporting. The segment reporting mein you will start with segment revenue less GST, other revenue, that will give you total segment revenue less segment expenses, segment profit, to that unallocated expenses. This is basically segment revenue, segment expense and segment profits are disclosed. Three things. Three apart from that: assets, liability, capital expenditure and depreciation. Am I clear? So this is how you are supposed to prepare an operating segment, on which we have done questions which you prepare on this, how you prepare this report. So you have to learn the presentation of this report. So it was a very simple standard chartered. What is an operating segment? A separate line of business. Can two operating segments merge? Yes, they can merge if the financial economic characteristics are same, the nature of the product is same, production process is similar, method of distribution is same, regulatory environment is similar, then you can merge. After you merge, you decide whether it is reportable or not. Materiality, revenue should be 10% or more, assets should be 10% or more, profit or loss should be 10% or more of total profits or losses, whichever is higher. Total reportable segments ka revenue should be 75% or more. If it is less, include others. Those segments which were reportable in the previous year will become reportable in the current year, provided they had satisfied materiality test in the previous year. Correct? Or any other segment which organization feels necessity. Those segments which are not a part of reportable segments, they are clubbed together as one as other operating segments. Then you are supposed to prepare a segment report chartered. Correct? Segment revenue, add other income, total revenue minus segment expenses, segment profit, unallocated expense subtract, unallocated income add, that will give you profit before tax less tax expense gives you profit after tax. Then segment assets, unallocated assets, unallocated investments, segment liabilities, unallocated liabilities, reserves and surplus, share capital. Correct? Other information we are supposed to disclose depreciation and capital expenditure. Then geography also, you are supposed to disclose how much your revenue is generated inside India, outside India, or in home country, foreign country, but we are talking from the perspective of India. So I told inside India, outside India, assets inside India, outside India, and total capex you are doing inside India and outside India. Am I clear? So very simple standard. We have done questions on this. The questions are generally based on test and this preparation of report. So those tests are very important and report is very important. Thank you so much. See you in the next video with the next standard. Till then, bye-bye.